risk management is always very important. Like you don't want to put any C-suite at risk because their name is all over. They have signatures all over. If I don't protect them from getting into any bad situation, then I'm not doing my job correctly. That's actually the top thing, risk management, and then, cost savings.
Welcome to another episode of Tax Leaders Unplugged. Our guest for today is Denise Bee. Denise is San Francisco based and she's the head of tax at Figma, which is a fast-growing SaaS company that provides a web-based design tool for user interface and user experience design. And Denise, she started her career in international tax at Pricewaterhouse. And then she switched her career path to investment banking for a few years, where she worked on M&A and IPO transactions in San Francisco, New York, Japan, Hong Kong, and London. And she boomeranged back to tax in 2002 and had various in-house tax roles at a few tech and telecom companies like Vodafone and Riverbed. She was the head of tax at Slack, which was acquired by Salesforce, prior to joining Figma. And Denise received her undergraduate degree from High School of Business at UC Berkeley and her Master's of Tax from Golden Gate University. And she has recently completed a CFO program at Columbia Business School. The focus for our conversation today is on tax teams and the relationship with the C-suite. Denise, welcome.
Hi, Stevi. Thanks for having me.
Very excited to have you on the podcast. You have worked in so many regions and countries like San Francisco, New York, London, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and back to San Francisco. You also have some of your family living in Europe, I understand, in France. How has this exposure to very different cultures shaped you?
Yeah, I'm the lucky person who get to travel and lived in so many different countries. I was born in Hong Kong originally, lived in Australia with my mom as a teenager, and then moved to the US with my dad, where I finished college. After I graduated from UC Berkeley, I did work in a few countries outside of the US. And exposure to different cultures, languages, and people has taught me that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. These experiences have shaped me and enhanced my creativity and foster me with greater compassion and empathy, for sure. And in my view, like difference in things increase creativity because you see people doing the same thing in many different techniques, many different ways, and it can definitely apply to work as well, right? You try to solve the same issue, but you know, with the experiences you have seen people do it in many different ways in many different countries, you can be creative and finding the right solution in many different places. Also, it fosters me to have greater compassion and empathy because when you're living in a country, in a different country, you're not like a tourist who is only trying to experience the good things, the fun things, right? You also will be exposed to some not so fun things in that country. And the challenges of living in a country, different country, along with, and being different and seeing the kindness and support of the locals really brings me, make me feel really appreciate the value of generosity from the locals and makes me want to reciprocate the kindness and pay it forward. And so it really does shape me to be a more compassionate, more empathetic and kind person. It's just like now, and I definitely encourage people to live abroad if they get the chance to do so. And just the world's becoming so much more connected with the advancement in technologies and transportations. It's a great opportunity to embrace different cultures and become more like globally minded.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these days, now that you can work from everywhere, even tax people, it's definitely a recommendation to do. Thanks for sharing. So in your career, you've been ranging in your career between investment banking and tax, definitely at the beginning of your career. Tell us a bit like what was the reason for this? How has this been helpful for your tax career, if at all? Tell us a bit.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have gone through to different areas in my career and life so far. And being trained as an investment banker really helped me build my grits. The long hours, the demanding work environment, which is helpful in any career, actually, not just in tax. But tax is busy, so the grits really help to work through everything with a smile on the face. So that was great. And the technical training in finance helped me, build my understanding in financial statements, like how does it impact bottom line, P&L, and then build in the tax knowledge I have really does help me, advance my conversation with the C-suites, with the finance organization, plowing through financial statements, the data that is in the financial statements, especially these days with Pillar 2, it's very important. And it just makes my job so much more efficient. And the time saved on, weeding through the details, I can actually use it to think strategically how to help the company be more strategic on the tax side, right? Being able to look at the company's situation 1,000 feet high and then zoom up and zoom back down into the details. I'm a very hands-on person. I like to dig into the details. And with what I've learned in finance and bringing it back to tax, it just is a very, great marriage of the two. It just helps each other. And also being able to, I've learned how to create a lot of presentation pitch books when you're an investment banker. And that really, it's helpful being a tax professional, being able to create tax, presentation to the board, to the C-suites. Those are great.
Yeah, that resonates really well. You also did recently the CFO program. Why did you do this additional training in your career? Is this something you can share some experiences about and the reason why at all you started it?
Yeah, it's actually a funny thing that I did. I was actually helping my son through his high school application, and he was applying to a few college prep schools, and the applications are pretty demanding. And one of them asked the parents to write about ourselves. So I was writing about myself, like, I actually want to do it, apply to a school for myself as well. And I always wanted to do my MBA, but I never got a chance to do that. Looked through some EMBA programs, and I thought, oh my God, the ROI is just too low, and the opportunity cost is too high at this point of my career. Like if I were to be 10, 20 years younger, I probably would do it, but it's just, too late in the game, I think. So then I found a CFO program at Columbia Business School, which is a shorter program, remote, and is taught by a prominent business school professor. And the program allows me to better understand what a CFO is looking for as a finance leader. I learned about the technical topics like capital allocation, operational efficiency, KPI, and how to work with the board and better understanding of the new ESG world. There are some of the topics that were covered in the program, which was super helpful.
And I like that you refer to the fact that it helped you to understand better the CFO and how the CFO is looking at potentially tax and other topics. Tell us a bit more. Like, would you recommend tax people to do such a training and to get a better understanding of how a CFO is looking at the work we are doing?
I think so, because what it does is it actually digests through what the CFO is looking at, like from the grounds up to the end goal. Like, what is he really looking at? It's to give him a set of financial statement. What is he looking for? Like, what does he want? And these days, CFO is not just purely number driven. They're also very strategic. That side, you can't really learn from books. But throughout the program, there's a section that talks about strategic thinking of a CFO. And they invited, I think, a handful of CFO that gone through their experience in strategic thinking for their company, which I thought was very helpful.
Can you give some examples of what, maybe relevant examples of strategic thinking of a CFO and how this is useful to share within our tax audience here, like some of the things you learned?
Yeah, I think it was, it's the stories that they tell about, like not just to look at one thing, but like a CFO is not just to look at financials, say, oh, we want to increase the EPS by X% or my P&L drive costs down X%, but like, how do you strategically help the company to grow outside of the numbers, right? Programs that you have to put in place. almost like an operator that has a very sharp financial mind. So in tax, like tax is, one of the item on the financial statements, but there are more to it than just filing the tax returns. Should we look at IP migration? Should we look at if we look at an M&A, should we look at more than just what the financials that the target company brings along? Is there something in it that is tax related? Those kind of things is more strategic than just purely looking at the face of the financials of any company.
And any other like really interesting learnings that you can share here, thought-provoking stuff, things that can help our audience to be closer to the CFO, to have a better understanding? I mean, we always experience, all of us have experienced it, that a CFO not always is into the details of tax, operates a bit at a higher level. At the same time, we require a lot from the CFO. We require approvals for projects we are doing, maybe also structurings we are doing and whatnot. Any things you can share there? Any other learnings?
Yeah, I mean, to be able to understand them makes your presentation of some complex tax issue easier, like easier to get your point across, because you know more what they're thinking about, right? After the CFO program, I kind of understand, they have to look more on capital allocation, budgets. That's not something that you'll learn in the tax program. That's not something that you normally think about. So something outside of tax.
Is there, because I like the reference to capital allocation, budgets. This is a very hot topic in the tax world. The reason being that we as tax people, we always get too little budget, right? The CFO or the CFO office has a lot of reporting lines, and it feels that tax is always a bit the stepchild or the little sister in the CFO office. Any learnings there on how to get maybe more budget allocated? Any things you have learned how a CFO is looking at the allocation of budget? Is this ROI driven? Is this business case driven? Are there any things you can share here?
Yeah, maybe look at ROI. That's something I learned in the program. How do you calculate ROI, right? So the amount that you spend in, say, a software in tax, what does it ultimately bring you in terms of tax benefits? Like, does it help you save headcounts? Okay, if I use this software, I can hire one person less, kind of work out a whole cost and benefit scenario for the CFO. I think if I were the CFO, I want to say, if I'm spending $100,000 on a software, what do I get out of it?
And because that sounds a bit like cash is still king, eh? So you invest and then you want to make sure that the return on it is super clear up front. Any other KPIs from the CFO that you have discovered which are useful to understand for tax people?
Risk management is always very important. Like, you don't want, to put any C-suite at risk, right? So as a tax professional for a company, one of the main things is to make sure that you don't get anyone in trouble. They make sure you do everything legally and, legally and correctly, and as according to law, of course,
That sounds like that we have a good one here to talk a bit about the tax compliance, the importance. So you're saying that CFOs, they are trained indeed, on the one hand, all things cash, but on the other hand, definitely risk management as well. So they should, strictly speaking, have a good understanding of what the risk of non-compliance can mean, right?
Yes, definitely. Because their name is all over, they have signatures all over anything that's to the tax authorities. Is basically, it is, if I don't protect them from getting into any bad situation, then I'm not doing my job correctly. That's actually the top thing: risk management, and then, cost savings and etc. Yeah.
And was there a chapter about taxes in the training, in the program?
Funny, there was one, but it was too short to care. Like, maybe it was just half of one day.
All right. Underwhelming to you then?
Yes, I was disappointed. I was like, why is there so little coverage of tax? And I think it's just because the program is it was a 9 months program. It's just too much to cover, and tax is so complex. I think you need another 9 months program to cover tax itself.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, don't you think that it is insane that it's a 9 months program, but still there is only half a page about taxes in it. Is that how can this be justified? Is that not signaling already from the beginning of this training that tax is a bit underlighted for the CFO, and that we should try to get to a better position there, and maybe make sure that the tax awareness of CFOs in general increases?
Yeah, I flagged that to the program. I said, you guys need to put some more, course material for tax. And it's funny, I was invited to do a boot camp for CFO Institute in San Francisco to talk about tax. And I've got so many questions and interest in it, just because there isn't any course out there for CFO to learn about tax.
Interesting. Denise, in your career, you have built many tax tax teams from scratch. So greenfield tax departments in fast-growing and successful tech companies like Slack, Figma. What attracted you to these roles? Because they are very different from industry dinos, where you enter a very big team and everything is established. Can you elaborate a bit? What attracted you to those greenfield tax departments and building them?
Yeah, I passionately love what I do as a tax lead for tech companies. There's so much about tax, and I want to make it cool, easy to understand, workable, and less of a pain for the C-suites, right? Tax rules are different around the globe, and there's no way for one to know it all. There's just absolutely no way. So after being in tax for 20 years, I know enough to be dangerous. Like, I know my smell test is pretty good. I know there is a problem, but I don't know what exactly. I mean, I know there's a problem, but I don't know the details of how to resolve the problem. But being in tax for 20 plus years, I have great network for people that I can go to work for a solution. I also attend quite a few tax conferences where I meet a lot of great tax leaders and build a great network, and they're in the same position as myself, who are there to learn and there to meet people. And we share best practices and practical ways to do things, and then bring them back home to my companies to apply, right? That's good. So there are a few things that attract me to be a tax lead in successful and fast growing tech companies. That includes like continuous learning. There's never a dull moment in tax, especially after TCJA in 2017. There's so many changes, right? And it's great. I mean, it's not boring. It's not like you learn a set of tax rules and it carries on for the next 50 years. It's not like that. So that's one thing, continuous learning. The people, they're smart, they're youthful, they're full of energy, which makes me feel younger. And the willingness to accept changes, that is something that resonate with me. The speed. I love fast-paced companies. Identify a need, evaluate a workable solutions, and then you move on with it. There are some other older and more mature companies will take years to make a change, but fast-paced tech companies are just like really fast. Lastly is the technologies. Like, startup tends to use a lot of newer tech tools, and I feel like I'm more relevant, especially in Silicon Valley, when I can use these tools.
Yeah, can imagine. Can you give examples of tools that you are using, which you think are worth sharing here with the audience? Unexpected tools, maybe, that in more established old industries are not so common to use?
Like Figma. I use Figma to, we have a new product called Slides, and we use it to do presentations. So I don't use PowerPoint. We all use Figma to do presentation. And I'm not biased here. I really, truly do love it. And we use Notion a lot, that's a great tool. And what else? Dropbox paper, the real-time collaboration with people. And those are just a few that I can name of. I'm sure there are more.
You wanna elaborate a bit more on, for example, the use of Figma and Notion, because I can imagine many people in the audience, they want to have experience with it, how it brings value, why they should maybe have a look and maybe consider trying it out.
Yeah,
You can pick one of both.
Yeah, I can talk about Figma, like Figma all day. It's like the FigJam, for example. It is a great tool. I can bring it to the indirect tax area, right? When I first joined Figma, I was, trying to build up the indirect tax function, the pillar with the company, and I have to work constantly with the engineers to make sure that the Figma system allows us to do a correct, incorrect tax calculation. So, and the engineers are working everywhere, not just based in San Francisco. They're in New York, they're in Europe, they're everywhere. And so working together on a file like the FigJam, I was able to show them how the tax structure works and what am I expecting. And then we're all in this file looking at it, trying to move, post-its around, and is this what you mean? Is this what that means? That was super helpful. And again, we talked about slides. I use Figma slides to do presentations like the board meeting or meeting to the CFO, and instead of PowerPoint, which is great and beautiful. Notion is another one that we use, but as a whole company, like all the company's policies and the know-how, the guru cards are all in Notion, which is kind of a real-time, real-time documents that you can just refer to with all information. This is very resourceful.
Yeah, we are at LogTax also big users of both Figma and Notion, and fully agree. I mean, I hear you on Figma. And Notion for us is also, it's on project management, task management, but it's also one big knowledge repository for us. So we use it a lot also
That's
to
right.
document stuff, and yeah.
Tell me a bit. One more Slack. Slack, everybody uses it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It makes, oh my God, I have to bring that back because when I joined Slack so many years ago, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to use it. I was sending emails to my manager, and he's like, "Why are you sending me emails?" And he refused to respond to me. So then I was forced to learn how to use Slack, and of course I have to. I was working for the company, and I, obviously later became a power user. And I was working on a project at Slack, which typically will take 12 to 15 months because, you have to collaborate a lot with the outside advisors and within the company, with legal, with accounting. But using Slack, I was able to complete the project within 7 months versus 15 months because you just cut down so much more conversation time and it was just more efficient. So that's just another example.
And so tell us a bit, you arrived in companies where there was no tax function at all. So I imagine at a certain moment you got a call from a CFO. Hey, Denise, we are installing for the first time a tax function. I want a tax leader to lead that function. What do you do when you arrive in such a company as an incoming head of tax? What is your first week looking like in terms of like the big things you are looking at, the big first actions that you are taking? Can you help us understand a bit better what it is about?
Yeah, it's like you're a doctor, you're seeing a patient, and the patient comes in and see you, "Hey, I'm sick, but I don't know what's wrong with me." Then you're there to like do a health check, scanning the companies with your X-rays, which are your eyes, and whatever, like everything that you know, and just look through everything that you can for the company to see from a tax perspective. Is there anything that's missing for the company? And then draw a roadmap and timeline how to fix it, and who you need to work with to fix the issue. Usually when a company is, say, 5 to 10 years old and they never had a tax in-house function, there are a lot to fix for at least 6 months. Like you have to come in and just kind of put things in place, right? Because it's all over the place. So 6 to 9 months, you're putting things back in place. And the times after, you kind of forward-looking how to strategically help the company be more tax efficient.
And other tips or recommendations you can share here for people that for the first time install a tax function?
I've mentioned risk. So that's the first thing when you do your health check, look at risk area. Make sure that you mitigate all those risks first before you even move forward to anything else. So that's one thing. Build your network. If you have opportunities to build your tax network, tap into that, because as you're building your team, you need to hire people. And it's very hard to hire good tax people. It takes months to even find one, if any. So if you already have a good tax network, and the tax world is so small, you can actually tap into it and say, "Hey, I'm interviewing this person. What do you think?" Do kind of a background check on the side. So that's always helpful. and be a strategic thinker for the company, because you're not just a tax operator, you're also a strategic leader, just, for the tax side for the company. So think strategically, get a seat at the table, get in front of everything that is happening with the company, whether it's a new product coming along, if there's an M&A project that's coming along, is there a new strategic pricing model that the company is working on? Just get in front of everything. International expansion, that's another big thing. So get in front of the company, and just don't lose traction. And lastly, I guess for a tax professional, I always try to hire somebody who one day I would want to work for. And it's great, because then I know this person is going to succeed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was thinking, so you arrive in a company where there has not been a tax function before. So the business probably was also not really annoyed by the limitations that tax sometimes can impose on the business in terms of staying compliant or specific compliance activities that need to happen. How do you deal with pushback that you may expect now that for the first time you are arriving and you are installing policies and you are installing specific do's and don'ts, controls? Any experience there? How to get the buy-in from the business and to respect you as a strategic function rather than being the tax operator in the corner that nobody likes?
Yeah, luckily I'm lucky. Like both at Slack and Figma, I work very well with the team, with the CFO org, and they trust me, I trust them, and we respect each other. It's a very good, excellent working relationship. So when I have to bring something up like that requires a big change, I don't just bring it up, say, hey, we need to do this. I don't just do that, but I always bring up the pros and cons on why we should and should not do it. Then, trying to explain that we are better off to putting this in place rather than not, and the risk involved if we don't, then typically I don't just randomly bring up things to office. I only bring up things to CFO if it's big enough for a change. So typically they will agree, and we'll just do it and make the company an even better place.
And did you, for example, invest in tax classes, tax trainings for non-tax people, that type of stuff, or?
No, but we have, okay, so at Slack, we have a tax channel. So where for the sales folks or order management, for anyone who's not in tax, when they have questions, they go in and ask us tax questions in that channel. And for customers who have tax issues, they bring it to the tax, customer support, and those questions come to us sometimes if the technical or the customer support cannot resolve it. And we also put up like a guru card, like in a Notion page, where we teach non-tax people how to resolve some tax issues. And so they will go there first. If they can't resolve it, then they come to us. This is more ad hoc, on-demand type. Yeah.
Interesting. You tapped upon, or you referred to, the importance of network. What do you do yourself to continuously build your network and maintain it? Any examples of industry associations you are in and the value you get out of it as a tax leader?
Yeah, I'm involved in a few. Like there's a foreign tax club that I'm in the Bay Area, where tax leaders meet once a month for dinner and wine, and we talk about foreign taxes. We also have a North Bay tax director group where we meet once a quarter. We sometimes invite tax experts from the law firm or accounting firm to talk about a tax topic, and we discuss on a round table how companies can work around or work on some certain topics practically. We also have my little networks where I meet for dinner or lunches, and we also have a channel at Slack that I created. It's called a Tax Guru Workspace. So we have like casually people, usually tax leader will join that workspace and ask questions, and whoever wants to answer can get in and answer those questions. So those are great. And also, if when I attend tax conferences overseas, I kind of maintain some contact with tax leaders overseas, and if I have questions on their country, I just go in LinkedIn because I'm already connected with that person and just, hey, have you heard of that in your country? So that's always helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I can imagine. Like I maybe underinvested a bit in mine, definitely internationally. But if you use it in such a fashion that you can, before going to advisors, already can ask your peer network about a specific rule in one or the other country where they are the expert, that resonates a lot. No, sounds interesting. You mentioned already earlier that you have a special experience, a special relationship with Excel. Excel in tax is a very interesting one to discuss, because obviously Excel comes with a lot of positive things. At the same time, Excel has limitations. What is your overall experience of using Excel in the tax domain, and what are your experiences about the pros and the cons?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was younger, when I was interviewing for jobs, I remember always saying Excel is my best friend, and then they're like, "Why?" So that was like, they're like, "Why is it your best friend?" But it is for my job, especially when it's so, you know, in investment banking, it's so modeling intensive. I constantly have to do a lot of M&A models, so I had to use Excel like a power user, right? And now in tax, I also build a lot of models. Like the tax provision is a model, the tax return work paper is a huge model, right? And if you want to build different scenarios to understand, in say 5 years, a few years from now, I want to build a tax structure. Let's put in the model to see what the tax outcome is, putting in the financials. That's a big model. Excel gives me the flexibility to build those kind of models. I mean, the formulas, the macros, the toggles that you can build in, great. But obviously, it comes with some negatives as well. If you're, human error is one of them. It's very easy to link the wrong cell, then the whole thing is wrong. So you've got to build in some checks within the model. And when the model gets too large, it crashes your computer. So that's another con.
Have you ever inherited an Excel from somebody else?
Oh
And,
my God, many times.
and what's your experience there?
Like I typically, if it's a big one, I typically have to change my prescription on my glasses, like after looking through that model for a while.
Yeah, because
Yeah, it is
that is
painful.
one of the pains that is still top of mind for myself. Where if you can build your own template model, whatever, from scratch, it's fairly pleasant. But if it is the opposite way, like you inherit a spreadsheet from someone else, it can be rather painful, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it takes time. I think if it's not like if you build your own model, let's say maybe 5 days, you're good to go, right? But if you're picking up a huge model from someone else, you probably spend the 5 days just to understand what's going into the model before you can actually use it to go further.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Denise, what would be for our audience your one piece of advice that you would offer to aspiring tax professionals looking to have or to get the most out of their career? What would be your biggest recommendation that you can share here?
Be humble and be smart, be humble, and be kind. I mean, tax is a never ending work. I mean, it is complex. I mean, you have to do boring tax returns, but that's where you have to start. Like, right, you have to start from the return. It's maintained, but it has to be done, because any tax planning that you put together ultimately needs to be meticulously presented in a tax return, which is to be looked at by the tax authorities. If that portion is not done correctly, whatever smart ideas you have for tax planning, it's not going to go right. So, get proper training from the Big Four if you can, because they give the best accounting training, and then move into a company where you can be a tax generalist, that you learn not just about one side of tax, but many different angles of tax, like transfer pricing, income tax, indirect tax, tax audits, anything that you can name off in tax, right? So then you just become so much more well-rounded. You just become so much more well-rounded and useful for a company, and helpful for being a tax leader of a company.
And what would you say is the ideal duration of your big four period before you go in house? Any definition there? Is there an ideal duration, or does it depend?
Back in the days, you have to stay for at least 3 years to get your CPA. I don't know about now. I think now you don't need to stay as long. I'm not sure, but I think 3 years is good. 3 to 5 years is good.
Yeah, makes sense. All right.
But then meaning like 3 to 5 years, you get training from the big four or the accounting firm, and then you move into in-house, but you start low and you grow within. You don't just like go in and say, hey, I want to be a manager. That's probably not going to happen after 5 years, right? You probably be a senior and then you kind of grow within.
Fantastic. I think I like the conversation a lot. It was very, very interesting. All the insights you've shared. In particular, I think your experience due to the CFO training you recently did and how it made you look through the CFO glasses at the tax function, maybe the C-suite glasses at the tax function. I liked it a lot. So thanks for the conversation, Denise. And I hope to see you back on this podcast anytime soon.
Yeah, thanks, Stevi. Always nice to talk to you.